Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I'm here in Brockport, New York, actually right on the Erie Canal. It's like 50 yards right there. I can see the Erie Canal. Um, so anyway, few things to talk about. So I had 1,776 subscribers yesterday. I actually have, I think, one more unless somebody quit when I wasn't looking. But talk about 1776 a little bit. So obviously, there's a lot of history from the Revolution and what was going on then. We know that the Declaration of Independence was authored by Thomas Jefferson. And I've said this before, but if you read the Declaration, it's really just a legal argument, right? Jefferson was a lawyer. He read for the law. He went to William and Mary in College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, read for the law under George Wythe, who was a prominent citizen of Colonial Williamsburg. In fact, if you ever go to Colonial Williamsburg for a visit and you take, you can go to Colonial Williamsburg. This is a little travelogue now. You can just go there and walk around the colonial capital and see cool stuff. But if you want to go in a lot of the properties like the governor's mansion and the George Wythe house and other places like that, you have to have a pass. But they give discounts for all sorts of things. Like I think they have a military discount. I know they have a discount for school teachers, but it's pretty cool. And even if you have your kids in tow and they're not super interested in history, there's so much cool stuff that they can see that just is like a day in the life of a colonist and somebody that lived in Williamsburg. There's blacksmith shops, there's farriers, there's the powder magazine, there's courts. There's actually two different courts. And so, yeah, it's well worth a visit to Williamsburg, even if you don't go to Busch Gardens or Water Country, USA. Go to Williamsburg, go to the colonial capital. So anyway, and speaking of William and Mary, like if you, Duke of Gloucester Street there in Williamsburg, it's a mile from the courthouse, the High Court, to, I believe it's the Wren Building, on the campus of William and Mary. And the Wren Building is actually the oldest building in continuous use at a college in the United States. And since we're talking about 1776, I was talking about Jefferson. He's an alum of William and Mary. He wrote the Declaration of Independence in 1776. His mom passed away that year, or earlier in the year. Another cool thing that happened in 1776 is the first chapter of Phi Beta Kappa was founded at the College of William and Mary. So there were some interesting things. Another thing that was interesting that was totally not on the radar of any colonists for two reasons. One is they didn't have radar, and two is, the colonists just occupied a small part of this continent, right? Or of what would eventually become the United States. So in 1776, the city of San Francisco was basically created by Spanish missionaries. Another thing that happened in 1776, done by Spaniards, is there were 10 Spaniards that left from Santa Fe, New Mexico, or what was not New Mexico then, and they did an 1,800-mile trek exploring the area between the Rockies and the Sierras, which no Europeans had ever really been in. So a lot of interesting stuff happened in 1776 beyond just the Revolution, but stuff that would have an impact going forward. So that's a little bit about 1776. I do highly. Somebody asked me the other day about books that I would recommend. One book I would recommend is the book 1776 by David McCullough. Mr. McCullough passed away recently, but his work stands the test of time. He wrote a lot of great books, some biographies, some just he just wrote a lot of interesting books about the United States. And if you only read David McCullough books, you would have a fair understanding of the U.S. because he's the guy that wrote the Adams biography that was made into the movie with Paul Giamatti as Adams, and I think what's her name? Anyway, I can't remember the lady that played Adam's wife, but anyway, it'll come to me. I wanted to say Amy Adams, but that's not right. But anyway, McCullough also wrote about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, he wrote about Truman. He did a lot of cool books. Another book he did was about Americans in France in the 19th century. It was super, super cool. A great book. But read 1776. It's kind of a deep dive into stuff that happened in just that pivotal year. Okay, so there's been some stuff bothering me that I wanted to talk about. And it's kind of stuff in the news. To me, it's a lot of stupid. Sometimes people say stuff that's stupid. And when I say people, I mean like public officials, stuff like that. They say stuff that's stupid, and then they don't take it back. The other thing is, every once in a while, people just need to shut the F up about other people, and that's in the news. And then there's a couple of stupid lawsuits that I want to talk about. So on the first count, there were 4 students at the University of Idaho, or actually Moscow, Idaho, that were murdered recently. And they were all stabbed to death in their beds, right? So it was a very up close and personal crime of, a tremendous magnitude. And, the police in Moscow, Idaho said a lot of stupid things. One of the things they said was, there's no danger to the community. And I'm like, wait a minute. You got somebody that stabbed 4 people to death, not some random act, right? They're like, oh, it was targeted. Well, yeah, no duh, because he targeted 4 people in their own home, or like one of them was staying over. And then they're like, but there's no danger to the community. It's like, you don't even know who this person is. How could you possibly say there's no danger to the community? I hate it when cops say shit like that, because it's stupid. It's like, wait a minute. You got somebody that just murdered 4 people with a knife in their own beds, and you don't think that person's dangerous to anybody? Now, the only reason they wouldn't be a danger to the community is if they left, Moscow. But they would be a danger to somebody's community, because, like, I'm thinking, if I already, like, stabbed 4 people to death, right? I'm like, what do I got to lose by killing another person or 2 other people, right? It's like, you can only death penalty somebody once, right? Molly Ivins did before she passed away, she did a column in the Austin newspaper, and she was like, the death penalty's too good for Timothy McVeigh, because in Texas, we'll kill somebody for killing 1 person. Timothy McVeigh killed like 138, or I don't even remember what the number was. She's like, what do we do about him? We can't kill him 138 times. So anyway, cops need to just stop saying stupid shit like that. Like the cops in Frederick, Maryland. The other night in Frederick, downtown Frederick, my wife works in Frederick, by the way. And by the way, downtown Frederick is a beautiful town, beautiful city. Lots of cool stuff to do, cool restaurants, anything you would want, really. A lot of cool shops, cultural things. Of course, the courthouse is there. I used to go to Frederick all the time. But one thing that happened is a couple of guys got in an argument, and then they just kind of had they had a shootout. Well, then the cops showed up, and they arrested one of the dudes in the shootout. Apparently nobody was injured, but one of the shooters got away. And they're like, well, there's no danger to the community. I'm like, really? This dude had a gun, right? And Maryland does not have particularly liberal gun laws. So somebody that was carrying in Maryland, there's a fair chance they were carrying the gun illegally to begin with, right? But they got in an argument that escalated to a shooting in the downtown area during a busy time of the day, right? It was in the evening. And then the police didn't capture this person, but they're like, yeah, he's no danger. Well, wait a minute. The dude was a danger when he got in an argument and they just started throwing down and, flinging bullets around. How is he not a danger now? He's already been in a shootout and ran from the police, right? I was like, stop saying that. Until you got somebody that you know for a fact has committed a crime in custody, especially when it involves serious violence, murder, they're a danger to the community, right? They've already shown they're willing to, do something dangerous. So anyway, that's my comments on saying stupid stuff. Stop it. The other thing about people just shutting the F up, I got a few examples. Brittany Griner has been released from Russian custody. Everybody knows about that. But, everybody, instead of just being grateful that Brittany Griner has been released from custody, was immediately like, well, what about Paul Whelan? He was a Marine and he's been there longer and stuff. It's like, you don't know what went into releasing anybody, right? Those are high-level discussions between governments, okay? Now, I don't know, what all of the issues are with Paul Whelan. I think he should be released, right? I'm sure he's there on trumped up charges, right? Like that's kind of like the Russian MO. But even Whelan's family was like, we're so happy to hear that Brittany Griner was released. And all these people with their stupid ass hot takes, like, well, what about Whelan? Well, what about him, right? Like the United States government, and I didn't tell Whelan to go over there, right? I don't know why he was in Russia. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm not saying he shouldn't be released, but let's be grateful that Brittany Griner was released, okay? And, let's just leave it at that, right? We traded a bad guy for Brittany Griner. Were their crimes comparable? Of course not. It never is like that. Americans get arrested, and you should know this if you follow the news. Americans will get incarcerated for BS in foreign countries. And foreign countries' judicial systems, even countries that we would consider democracies and like allies of ours, they don't have the same system. They don't do things the same way, and it's very confusing and bewildering. But people just need to be grateful that Brittany was released. And, I'm sure that the government is trying to get Paul Whelan released. I'm sure they're trying to get people released from China and other places where Americans have just been kind of like locked up for no good reason. So that's one. Second one people need to shut up about is Coach Prime, right? Deion Sanders. He left Jackson State after a lot of success there. Jackson State's an HBCU. He's gone to Colorado. Colorado sucks, okay? And people are like, oh, well, he just came in here and he's telling people they should quit the program. I'm like, yeah, you guys had one win this year and you're on scholarship. I don't think anybody in Colorado is getting value for what they're putting out, right? And the thing is, right, like people are like, oh, well, Deion, Coach Prime abandoned HBCUs. Coach Prime didn't go to an HBCU. He's not a product of an HBCU. He elevated the status of HBCUs. He showed that somebody could come in there, recruit top-level players, and have success and bring, notoriety and money to a university that's probably underfunded. But it's not Deion's fault that Jackson, Mississippi is, has a history of racism and a crappy water system, right? And you can't expect the dude, how many black coaches are in Power 5 schools? Not that many, right? I could think of a couple off the top of my head. I'd probably have to look it up. But leave the dude alone. He owes nothing to Jackson State. He owes nothing to HBCUs, right? He went to Florida State. People at Florida State hated him because he poached some of their good recruits. You know, let the man work his magic. And if you haven't watched any of the videos of him, this dude does not mess around. He is a guy that is, you know, all about discipline, personal accountability, not just on a football field. So what I think he did at Jackson State, he's going to replicate in Colorado. And I wish him all the success that he deserves. Another thing people need to shut up about is Jeff Saturday being the coach of the Colts, okay? You don't own the NFL franchise. You don't get to pick the guy that's the coach, right? If Irsay wants Jeff Saturday to be coach, fine. He could have picked Rick Monday, who is also has the last name of a day of the week, but doesn't, play baseball, okay? He could pick somebody named after any day. Joe Friday could be the coach if he wants him to, right? He owns the frickin' franchise, okay? And, you know, I don't know how, you know, because coaching at that level, a lot of it is just huge management project. I don't know Jeff Saturday's resume. I mean, I know who he is. I know he was a center for the Colts in their glory days. I know people in Indy love him. Hell, he wasn't even living in Indy, and I see his face on billboards every time I drive through there. The guy must have some juice, right? And hey, if the only thing he does is fix their offensive line, that's better than what was happening with Frank Reich. Even though I like Frank Reich because he was a Buffalo Bill, I like the guy, okay? But get off Irsay. It's his decision. It's his company, right? It's his company. He can run it how he wants. Couple of stupid lawsuits. There's a guy that sued Texas Pete's because apparently Texas Pete's is not in Texas. That's a dumbass lawsuit. He's just looking for pub. It's not going anywhere. Because, you know, I was talking about Zweigel's hot dogs recently. Zweigel's are made up the street here in Rochester, New York, right? They always have been for like decades and decades, since the 1800s. Zweigel's sells two kinds of hot dogs, really, that I care about. White hots, which are white, and they sell red hot dogs that are called Texas hots. Now, my understanding of where Texas came from is the original hot dogs were pork, the white ones, and then when they started using beef, they were red, and the Texas name came from the fact that everybody kind of associated Texas with cattle, okay? But they call them Texas hots. They're not made in Texas. They're made in Rochester, New York. But if you go into a hot stand around here and you say you want a Texas, they know exactly what you mean. You want a hot dog that's red and maybe has some beef products or something in it. But, you know, Texas Pete's doesn't owe this guy a thing. And also the stupid lady who sued Kraft because their Easy Mac takes longer than they say it does on the box or on the container. It's like, hey lady, did you ever think that your microwave isn't as powerful as the microwaves that Kraft tested this on? I mean, just stop. All right, so that's enough of my rant. Real quick, I wanted to say something about Christmas, you know, working like December 20th to, you know, January 3rd. A lot of people have talked about, you know, that there's no like bonuses, right? And there's a couple of things to know. First of all, Prime, last year, for example, Prime would say to shippers, hey, look, we'll get this load, but we need to really kind of grease some palms here and get our drivers to want to carry these loads. So we need you to kick in an extra $250, $400, whatever it is on this trip, and we'll make sure it gets there. But Prime doesn't have that kind of leverage right now, right? Like shippers could actually leave Prime and go to and go to the spot market and get stuff hauled for less money. Because as I said the other day, the spot market is inverted to the contract rate. So the spot market is actually, it's kind of funny. People think that carriers like Prime drive the spot market lower. The truth of the matter is the spot market is actually dragging down contract rates, okay? But people are willing to use Prime to carry because Prime has a good reputation. We try to, be professional, whatever it is, right? We get to places on time. Okay, so that money, those bonuses, right, are, probably reflected the delta between the contract rate and the spot market last year, which was tipped the other way. So, Prime can't ask for that money this year. It still wants the loads to take care of its drivers, keep its trucks moving. But it can't ask for money the way it could. So what did Prime do? They said, okay, we're going to give away 3 really nice pickup trucks. We're going to give away $5,000 cash, envelopes stuffed with cash. We're going to give away points. We're going to give away all sorts of stuff if you're running. Now, I have decided to not be running, but here's why. And it has nothing to do with the bonuses or the prize package, the bonus, whatever you want to call it, that Prime has done this year. It's not that I don't think that Prime is going to, give that stuff out. It's not bait and switch. People are going to win those. I'm just not confident that it's going to be worth it to me to be away from home during that time. And I'll tell you why. Part of it has to do with the calendar. Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve are on Saturdays. Christmas and New Year's Day are on Sundays. I can't imagine that there are a lot of people that are going to be working on that Friday before Christmas, the 23rd, and also on the 26th, also known as Boxing Day. People are going to make it a 4-day weekend. It also wouldn't surprise me that some shippers just shut down for that 4-day period, or certainly for 3 days, maybe adding the day on the front end or adding the day on the back end, right? But when Christmas falls on a day that people would ordinarily have off, like a Sunday, and I get that distribution centers and stuff are, 24/7 operations, but I just can't imagine there's a lot of loads, say, picking up on the 23rd or the 22nd that are gonna deliver. Some might deliver on the 24th because it's a Saturday, but I can't imagine much, if anything, delivering on the 25th, which means it's gonna get pushed to the 26th. And same thing around New Year's. So while people being out, like if you win the $5,000 or you win a truck, your per day comp is going to be worth it. But if you don't, and you just sit at a truck stop for 3 days over Christmas, for me, it's not worth it. Not at all. And I have noticed that there's been more time between loads, even when they do give you a pre-plan fairly quickly. There's been a lot of lag between loads. Like, for instance, I dropped my load yesterday at around 12:30, but I didn't have a pit, and I had 2 hours left on my drive clock. So I didn't have anything to do, so I PC'd to a truck stop that was like 20 miles away. So my 10-hour break ended last night around 2100, 2200. But I didn't have a pickup until 1100 this morning that I'm at now. And this delivers tomorrow in Ohio at 08. So maybe I'll get something quickly but I may not. I may just end up waiting, 12, 14, 16 hours to get something. That's right now. I can't imagine it's going to get better, that those gaps are going to close up between now and, say, the 5th of January. Just can't imagine it. So the idea that I'm going to, just sit around for days at a time, getting a 34, between every load, it just doesn't appeal to me. Now, I could be wrong. There could be like a butt ton of cargo that needs to be moved. I just don't anticipate that. That's the reason I'm not staying out. Everybody's got to analyze it for themselves. But my view always is, if I'm going to sit, I want to sit at home. When I'm out on the road, I want to just run like a scalded dog. But if I'm going to sit, I want to sit at home. If I'm doing a 34, I want it to be in my living room, not at a truck stop or wherever, So hopefully the people that do stay out get to run, they win the prizes, everything's cool, and I'm proved wrong. Because if I am, that just means that, the industry, we're still going strong. I just, and I know Prime is trying hard. I know the sales department's working hard. I just don't know that it's going to be that fruitful for people that stay out. Now, maybe because there are a bunch of people like me that get off the road, maybe it evens out and it's worth staying out. And I hope that's the case, because I'm going to be home. I hope everybody that is out gets to run and make some good money and win some prizes. So anyway, that's my thinking on that. Love to hear your comments, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.